All right, today we're diving into one of history's most fascinating and confusing figures, Socrates. I mean, this guy changed the entire course of Western thought, but here's the kicker. He never wrote a single word down. So, how do we even know who he was, and what can his story possibly teach us now? Let's get into it.
So this whole explainer really boils down to this one central mystery. You've got Athens, right? A democracy that's all about reason and logic. And yet, in 399 BCE, they decided to execute Socrates, a man the oracle at Delphi literally called the wisest person alive. So why? What could a philosopher have possibly done to make his own city want him dead?
Okay, to even begin to crack this case, you've got to understand the man himself. And honestly, Socrates was a walking contradiction. This first part is all about unpacking that paradox, the huge gap between the actual man and the legend he became.
Just look at this. On one hand, you have the man. He's the son of a stonemason, not some aristocrat. People said he was physically ugly, which in ancient Greece, a culture obsessed with beauty, was a big deal. He was a decorated soldier, loyal to Athens, but he never wrote a thing down. And then you have the legend, the guy we call the founder of Western philosophy, the man who inspired Plato, the wisest of all men. How do you get from that guy to this legend? It just doesn't seem to add up.
And it all just comes to this really shocking end. In 399 BCE, a jury of 500 of his own fellow Athenians votes to execute him. I mean, think about that. This wasn't some tyrant making a decree, this was a democratic decision. So what was it about him that pushed his own city right over the edge?
Okay, so our first big clue is all about how he did philosophy. See, Socrates didn't give lectures from on high. Nope, he just asked questions all the time. And his relentless questioning earned him a pretty great nickname, the Gadfly of Athens. You know, like one of those annoying horseflies that just won't leave you alone. Now, there's a fancy Greek term for his method, the elenchus, but really just think of it as a philosophical cross-examination. His goal wasn't to win a debate or prove he was smart. It was a tool he used to cut through all the BS, all the assumptions, and force people to see the contradictions in what they believed. And as you can imagine, that kind of thing tends to make people, well, really uncomfortable.
And here's how it works, step by step. First, he'd walk up to someone who was supposed to be an expert, a general, a politician, whoever, and ask a really big fundamental question, something like, what is justice? Or what is courage? Then he'd take their confident answer and just start pulling it apart, thread by thread, showing them all the hidden flaws. The whole point was to reveal that actually they didn't have a clue what they were talking about. So they'd end up in this place of a shared awareness of not knowing. Now just imagine doing that to the most powerful people in your city, every single day. Yeah, you can see how that might not go over so well.
And Socrates, he totally owned this gadfly identity. He said it himself, I am the gadfly that stirs the great horse of state. He really saw Athens as this big, powerful, but kind of lazy horse. And he believed it was his divine mission to sting it, to wake it up, to force it to think. To him, this was a public service of the highest order. But to a lot of Athenians, he was just an annoying pest.
So we've got the how, his super irritating method. But what about the what? What were the actual ideas he was pushing that were so radical, so dangerous? This is where we get into the real core of Socratic thought, his philosophy for the soul.
It really all starts with this idea of Socratic ignorance. The story goes that the oracle at Delphi said no one was wiser than Socrates, and he was so baffled by this, he set out to prove the oracle wrong. He went around questioning all the so-called experts and realized they all pretended to know things they absolutely did not. So he finally concluded, okay, maybe I am the wisest, but only because I, unlike them, know that I know nothing. It's not about being dumb, it's about having intellectual humility.
And this quote really sums it all up. The only true wisdom is in knowing you know nothing. For Socrates, admitting your own ignorance isn't a weakness, it's the very first step toward actually learning something. And that was a pretty radical idea in a society that was so sure of itself.
And from that humble starting point, Socrates built this totally revolutionary system of ethics. He argued that the most important thing you can do in life isn't chasing money or power or fame. No, your number one job is caring for your soul, and you do that by pursuing virtue. He had this wild idea that virtue is knowledge. Basically, if you truly deeply know what the right thing to do is, you will automatically do it. Which leads to this other really controversial belief, that no one does wrong on purpose. All wrongdoing for Socrates comes from ignorance, not from pure evil.
And all of this leads us to maybe his most famous and challenging statement of all. The unexamined life is not worth living. For him, a life spent just going through the motions, never stopping to question your own beliefs, your own values, well, that's not really a life at all. This was a direct challenge to every single person in Athens to wake up and think.
All right, so now we have the two main pieces of the puzzle, right? We've got his incredibly annoying method of questioning everyone, and we have his radical, tradition-shattering ideas. Now let's put it all together in the context of his trial and finally solve the mystery of why he had to die.
First things first, context is everything. Socrates' trial did not happen in a bubble. Look at this timeline. Athens had just gotten crushed in the long and brutal Peloponnesian War against Sparta. Then they had to endure this horrific rule by a group called the 30 Tyrants. By the time democracy finally got back on its feet, the city was just broken. It was paranoid, it was unstable, and it was looking for someone to blame.
And this is where it all comes to a head. The official charges against him were religious, things like impiety and introducing new gods. But the real reasons, the political reality, were so much deeper. His constant questioning of everything was seen as a direct threat to tradition. His talk about his daimon, or his personal inner voice, got twisted into a charge of bringing in foreign gods. Super scary for a city on edge. But the real killer, the thing that probably sealed his fate, was the third charge, corrupting the youth. Why? Because some of his most famous students were guys who had betrayed Athens, like the traitor Alcibiades, and even Critias, the leader of the 30 Tyrants. In the jury's eyes, Socrates wasn't just a weird philosopher, he was a political threat.
So, that's the solution to our mystery. Athens didn't execute Socrates because they disagreed with his philosophy. They executed him because, in that specific, paranoid moment in history, they saw him as a genuine political danger to their fragile, recovering democracy. But here's the ultimate irony. By sentencing him to death, they did the exact opposite of what they wanted. They didn't silence him. They turned him into a martyr, the ultimate symbol of intellectual courage in the fight for free thought.
His death basically guaranteed that his ideas would live forever. His student, Plato, made him the hero of his dialogues, which became the very foundation of all of Western philosophy. You know, entire schools of thought that came later, the Stoics, the Cynics, they all trace their roots right back to Socrates. His influence is just immense.
And so we're going to end this exactly where Socrates would want us to. Not with an answer, but with a question aimed right back at us. His whole life was about the power of self-examination, a principle he was literally willing to die for. So now his 2,400-year-old challenge becomes our own. Have you examined your life